Hello, and welcome to Seeker Aspirant Victor. My name's Asher, of course, but this week Jason is not here. He's in California, and so I'm here with Jenny.
Hi.
My madre. We are, of course, on Heartless, which is page 55 in this copy. And Jason and I got a couple pages into this, but then we spent like 20 minutes just being triggered. We did. So we didn't get that far, but we spent a long time on it. So that's why I think that you and I might be able to move through it quicker, but maybe not.
Maybe.
So it might just be a
re-trigger?
Yeah. Yeah, so this is Heartless, the chapter Heartless, round 2, the Jenny round, which is actually maybe not a bad idea. Okay. We should do more chapters like that. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to read?
Sure. Just from here, very beginning?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the most useful piece of learning for the uses of life is to unlearn what is untrue. I can't even pronounce the person's name.
Antisthenes.
There you go. Antisthenes. My monologues tend to be a little loose, but they could easily be a lot looser. It takes a conscious effort on my part to stay on track and not follow every tempting digression. I like to follow the course dictated by my initial impression of what a student needs to hear, and I usually end by putting the ball in their court. I can say it, and they can nod and agree, but that doesn't do any good. If you want to benefit from knowledge, you have to own it for yourself, and the only way to do that is to fight for it. Emerson said, "No man thoroughly understands a truth until he has contended against it. Having the answer isn't enough. You have to do the math."
Yeah, Jason was excited about that.
I can see Jason being excited about that.
Yes.
All right, want me to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay. The chair Marla vacated does not stay empty for long. A 50-something engineer named Arthur appears and waits for permission to sit down, which I give with a slight gesture. That may seem overly formal, but for Arthur, it's actually an improvement. The first time Arthur came to speak with me, he sat in a half lotus at my feet, which made me a little buggy. After I coaxed him up into a chair, we spent an hour disabusing him of his tendency to equate enlightenment with divinity. It's still hardwired into his thinking that the teacher must be regarded as an elevated being, so he never sits without permission and always speaks with formality. Arthur doesn't live in the house, but he's a frequent visitor, especially in spring when the gardens need so much help. Arthur tells me he wants a technique. Rather, he wants the technique. I really only have one technique, and everybody who comes to the house soon learns what it is from other students. But oddly, nobody seems to practice it until they receive it from me. I have laid it out many times, and I tried to put it in the public domain for the use of whoever wants it, but it has remained strangely proprietary, as if the only way it can work is if it comes directly from me. There's really not much to it, but I guess there's not much to closing your eyes and repeating a mantra or counting your breaths either. Okay, Arthur, I begin. The technique is called spiritual autolysis. I always say autolysis. Autolysis.
It's autolysis.
Autolysis means self-digestion, and spiritual means, hell, I don't really know. Let's say it means the level of self which encompasses the mental, physical, and emotional aspects, your royal I-ness. Put the two words together and you have a process through which you feed yourself, one piece at a time, into the purifying digestive fires. May I ask you a question, Arthur asks? Yes, Arthur. You make spiritual autolysis sound rather unpleasant. Yes, Arthur. It is an unpleasant process. Oh, I see. Thank you. You're welcome. The process of spiritual autolysis is basically like a Zen koan on steroids. All you really have to do is write the truth. Write the truth? Sounds simple, doesn't it? Yes, that's all there is to it. Just write down what you know is true, or what you think is true, and keep writing until you've come up with something that is true. Pi is the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter, says Arthur. Sure, I agree. Start with something as seemingly indisputable as that, and then start examining the foundation upon which that statement is built. And just keep following it down until you've reached bedrock, something solid, something true. Pi isn't the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter, he asks. The question presupposes that there's a circle. There's not a circle? Maybe, I don't know, is there? Well, if I draw a circle, when did you confirm the existence of an I? Draw? Have you already raced past the part where you confirmed that you are a separate physical being in a physical universe with the ability to perceive, to draw? Have you already confirmed duality as truth? If so, we have to switch seats. Arthur is thoughtful and silent for several moments. I guess that's what you mean by following it down. This is very confusing. I don't even know where to start. It doesn't matter where you start. Just grab a thread and start pulling. You could start by using Ramana Maharshi's query, who am I? Or what is me? And then just work at it. Just try to say something true and keep at it until you do. Write and rewrite. Make it cleaner and cut out the excess and go ego and follow it wherever it leads until you're done. And how long does that usually take? I would think a couple of years, but when you're done, you're done. And by done, you mean done. Oh, is this like journaling? Like keeping a diary? Good question. No. This is about personal awareness or self-exploration. It's not about feelings or insights. It's not about personal or spiritual evolution. This is about what you know for sure, about what you are sure you know is true, about what you are that is true. With this process, you tear away layer after layer of untruth masquerading as truth. Anytime you go back to read something you wrote, even if it was only yesterday, you should be surprised by how far you've come since then. It's actually a painful and vicious process, somewhat akin to self-mutilation. It creates wounds that will never heal and burns bridges that can never be rebuilt. And the only reason to do it is because you can no longer stand not to. He lets that sink in for a few minutes. What's the reason for writing it down? Why not just do it in your head, like with koans? Did you want me to stop?
I just was triggered a little bit, but in a good way, I think. Like, I think I would take what I was saying to you earlier back, which is that I guess he is fair. He puts all the components.
Kind of.
But he's like, here's some of the pieces, but you gotta put it all together.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's not, I think in our minds, we're so used to having like a structure, a formula.
Yeah.
You know, and I think he loosely provides a formula.
No, he describes things that are, you know, like the actual formula, like Byron Katie's work.
Yeah.
The actual formula. It has all this stuff in it. So he's describing a formula, but he's not describing a formula. He's not putting a link at the bottom that goes to the Judge Your Neighbor worksheet.
True.
That's my point. And it's like you just like now I feel so lucky that we like that we found that process. Like I can feel grateful and lucky without having engaged it like I should have. But I'm aware intellectually of what it is, of what it means within this, which is like it's a tool, it's a piece of the puzzle that I was like going, what? I don't, you're not providing something. And I was like, oh, it was that you weren't providing. And then I want to fucking hit him. It's like, why? I think this draws back to like his not relating to people.
Yeah.
I don't think he understands that this isn't helpful.
Well, but he says it at the beginning, and which was the part that kind of like stood out to me, is he says, the funny thing is no one does this process until I actually tell them. Like it almost sounds like he has to tell them directly. Like not even that he's put it out there, people have read about it, but they don't do it.
Yeah.
And so there's something about this process. And honestly, I think he does provide the formula. you just start writing down what you think is true. That's it. And then look at it and, prove that it's true. And then, but I think it's one of those things that it's so simple, but yet takes so much effort and so much resistance.
The ego doesn't want to do it.
Exactly.
You need more than just the technical, this is what happens. It's like, okay, yeah, but it's not just writing what's true. It's like trying to find out what's true about things that are upsetting you.
Right.
That's a tiny fucking detail. It's a huge fucking piece.
I think he doesn't even say that though. He just says you write down anything.
Start anything. Because he's gonna ask. I've interrupted you. He's gonna be like, well, what do I start? And he goes, start anywhere. Just start pulling at any string.
Yeah.
Or something like that. It's like that's not actually the best answer, because that's like saying like, well, you just start pulling anywhere, it would work. Yeah, but really what he needs to say, and what he should be telling every single person, is start investigating things that upset you. The things that the most deeply upset you, investigate them.
You could do that, although sometimes we're so invested in what upsets us that it's really hard to find them to be untrue.
Do you think that could be misguiding direction if you put it in the book?
It's like if you have a story about something and you're trying to actually prove it's untrue, that's a huge resistance place.
You're so right. You're right.
Yeah, it's like if I wrote down right now, we have a cat in the office with us. So I wrote down right now, Saturn is in the office with us. Like that on the surface seems true. But is Saturn really in the office with us? Are we really in the office? Is that actually Saturn? I mean, it's like you don't even have to start with something that triggers you, because honestly, you're invested in a story when there's a trigger. I'm not terribly invested on whether or not Saturn's actually in this office with us right now. But it's also kind of a mind bender, like for me to go down the rabbit hole. Well, you're just playing
devil's advocate and making me feel like I'm completely wrong.
I don't think you're wrong.
Well, maybe not wrong, but just not seeing the full picture.
Because
I didn't think about. I mean, I did.
Because the thing with the Byron Katie work is that she turns it around, right? Like you just turn it around.
Yeah.
The thing about the stack, which I don't know if you guys have talked about the stack, but it's based on the Byron Katie work, and you actually you do the turnarounds, but then you find evidence in your life, right?
Right.
And when I have a story about something, I can always find plenty of evidence that it's true.
Yeah. I guess here's what I might be forced to admit is that the process itself is so dynamic and variable, because humans are so dynamic and variable, that there's not gonna be only one specific way. So maybe just giving the blueprint of the logistical the technical details of what's happening maybe maybe that is more useful than any specific worksheet or something.
Right.
Because I still haven't fucking done the worksheet.
I think even if he started it with something like, what's the statement? Is it true? Can you be 100% sure that that's true?
Yeah.
Like right there, 3 prompts.
That's good. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
I think that would be helpful. But I still think it's interesting that he says people don't do it until he actually tells them about it, which I think is an important clue about this whole thing and our resistance.
I've always noticed it. And I agree with you that I think putting those 3 things would be in that order would be the most useful. He does, like, the issue is it's hard to give the criticism that he doesn't say some of those things. Like, he says, he even in the paragraph that one of the ones you just read, it's like, writing what is what you're sure is true. Mm-hmm. And then making sure you're absolutely sure. That's basically saying, is it 100%? That's what, so it's like he does have the same communication in different words within it. So that's why I guess I'm forced to admit at this point that I'm just personally triggered by it. There's nothing maybe inherently wrong with it. He's actually a fucking genius.
Yeah. But I mean, I think it's interesting because I think it's our own, I'm not going to say our, I think it's my own personal resistance to this process. That I'm like, no, he didn't explain it. Well, he did. No, but not clearly enough. Well, yes, he did.
I mean, I'm just having like a universal whatever, like that's how my job is with Raimundo.
Yeah.
And you're right. Yeah. Which, if I'm forced to admit that, within this process, the idea is he might have given us all the tools, and then I'm just not doing enough work.
Yeah.
I'm not trying hard enough, really. Which, I guess I don't know that that's true. But if that is true, then that could have some similarities across my other life.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff. Just let's keep it in.
Okay. Do you want to read?
Yeah, it's actually good to have you do that part because that was basically all the stuff I read last time.
Cool.
He lets that sink in for a few moments. What's the reason for writing it down? Why not just do it in your head, like with koans? That's another good question. Yes, koans and mantras are done in your head. Ramana Maharishi's "Who am I?" query is done in your head. The reason for writing it down on paper or on a computer where you can see it is because the brain, unlikely as it may sound, is no place for serious thinking. Anytime you have serious thinking to do, the first step is to get the whole shooting match out of your head and set it up someplace where you can walk around it and see it from all sides. Attack, switch sides, counterattack. You can't do that while it's still in your head. Writing it out allows you to act as your own teacher, your own critic, your own opponent. By externalizing your thoughts, you can become your own guru, judging yourself, giving feedback, providing a more objective and elevated perspective. Arthur is looking at me questioningly, so I continue. You're an engineer, right? I do want to pause. That is really good shit.
It's really good. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that, and I don't know if it's this book or if he keeps saying it, or if it's another book where he says, or if it's not him at all, where he says something about writing it down is, you're like pinning it to the ground. Like it's not moving around in your head anymore and like getting all swirly and like distracting you with other shiny objects. It's like you're literally pinning it to the ground so you can actually really see it. It's stuck. It's there. It's not this malleable, foggy, wispy thing that's in your head that you can just constantly evolve and change.
That might be why I'm resisting it.
To writing? Yep.
Because it's not something that, when you get it, when it's written or whatever it is, then it's like super there. Compared to if it's a thought, you're like, well, that's just crazy and that's gone now.
Yeah. No.
Arthur's looking at me questioningly, so I continue. You're an engineer, right? Yes. And you engineer what? Bridges. In your head? Arthur pauses a moment to consider. Yes and no, he says. Okay, you're saying yes because there's the process of conceptualization, right? The idea stage? There is, yes. And other internal creative and problem-solving stages along the way? Yes. And then what? What's after the initial conceptualization? Well, then there are the meetings and preliminary drawings and more meetings and the project managers, the creative process at work. Well, yes. So basically, it starts as an idea, a thought in someone's head, and ends up as a real bridge somewhere in the real world. Yes. And along the way, it evolves, takes shape, comes into focus, right? It moves from idea to rough sketches to highly precise drawings and scale models to an actual bridge that will last 100 years, something like that. Something like that, yes. And that's the creative process, from thought to reality. It's always the same process, whether it's a bridge, a poem, the space shuttle, or your life. Does that make sense? Okay, yes. You recognize that from your own life, your own work. Yes, I do. Could that all happen in someone's head, one person's head? Arthur laughs. Certainly not. No. Thought, whether in the brain or out, is a creative tool, And spiritual autolysis is a creative process, just like any other, just like building a bridge. But bridge builders are very educated men, Arthur points out. It's both an art and a science, and it can take a lifetime to fully develop. Creative endeavor is erected on a foundation of knowledge and experience. Absolutely, I reply. And I can assure you that while you're in this process of self-digestion, you're going to develop a voracious appetite for all sorts of knowledge: religious, esoteric, metaphysical, spiritual, New Age, Eastern, and Western philosophy, all that and more. You'll be relying on the knowledge and experience of men and women from throughout history without regard to race or nationality, but your search will take you far beyond human intelligence. Truth transcends time and boundaries, and so will your search for it. You'll definitely want a good library or used bookstore nearby. Does that make spiritual autolysis a path of intellect as opposed to a path of heart, or a path of devotion, or a path of service? Frankly, you start losing me a little bit there, Arthur. He gives me a perplexed look. I do want to comment on the previous paragraph when he says, talks about you'll develop a voracious appetite for all sorts of knowledge. I don't immediately understand exactly why.
Yeah, it occurred to me, like it kind of felt like there's two different reasons. And one is, I feel like, is you could almost be trying to distract yourself and re-anchor yourself back into some sort of identity or meaning, right? So like you're starting this process of autolysis, and it's almost like, I think you could start scrambling to find just the next identity. So it's like you start searching. So I think that could be one. I mean, obviously I don't think that's what he's talking about here, but I feel like I feel like there's two sides to the coin.
If I had to guess, I would guess he means like, it's Francis.
Oh.
Should I answer this? Probably not.
He's with Jason.
Right?
So, yeah. I wouldn't.
He might leave me a message. So I was saying, if I had to guess why you'd have a craving for knowledge, it's because when you start to dissolve certain beliefs, you're going to be like, well, that's not like that. Then how is it actually?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Like maybe the idea of like when you're destroying something, then you're like, well, I'm like, because you destroyed this part of the building, another part is broken down. So then you're going to have to go search for other things to go over and try to, I don't know. That's what I'm thinking. It just must be part of the process.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think there is. I agree. I also feel like, because he mentions it earlier, where it's a creative process. And so I think it kicks in your creative brain, which to me is also that place of wanting to learn new things and see new things and like understand new things. Like for me, I get so much inspiration from like audiobooks and like learning stuff.
Me too, yeah.
And so I feel like it almost awakens like your creative brain, maybe.
I feel kind of silly that I didn't pay attention to the association with the creative process before. Like that.
This is the first time
like,
I picked up on it.
Like the creative, like he's like heavily tying it in. Like it's a creative process, even though it is, the effects of it.
It's destructive.
It's destructive.
Yeah.
But to initiate the process, you will be activating and initiating the function of the creative process within the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And then that has certain processes and steps and concepts or whatever, ways to get from A to B with it. So like, I don't know, this makes me excited. It makes me want to start doing some math. Okay. Frankly, you start losing me a little bit here, Arthur. He gives me a perplexed look. I don't know what all these different paths are, Arthur. Spiritual autolysis is an intellectual endeavor, but I balk at calling it a path of intellect. It's a process of discrimination, of unknowing what's untrue, of progressively stripping away the false and leaving only what is true. Discrimination is used in a machete-like manner for hacking one's way through a dense underbrush of delusion, or, if you prefer, in a sword-like manner for hacking off one's own delusion-riddled head. Intellect is used as the sword with which ego commits a slow and agonizing suicide, the death of 1,000 cuts. Whether that makes it this kind of path or that kind of path doesn't concern us here. That's something for a student of paths to worry about. If the question stays with you, then it's something you can address for yourself in the process of spiritual autolysis. I used to be pretty well versed in spiritual literature, and I recall that there's a lot of talk about different paths. But from where I sit, it's just another way of distracting yourself from the difficult work of breaking free. No theory of paths is of any practical value in waking up. The very idea that there is a set path, much less a choice of paths, that one need merely follow is ruinously misleading. In short, this path business is just another case of the blind leading the blind, part of the vast mythology created by caterpillars teaching caterpillars how to become butterflies. Arthur interrupts my thoughts. I read that Don Juan said, whoa, I jump in, hold up a sec, is this going to be about the path with heart thing? Yes. I'm familiar with the Carlos Castaneda book in which Don Juan advises Carlito to choose a path with heart. I'm familiar with it for the same reason that so many spiritual seekers are familiar with it, because it has that ring of sagely goodness that makes it the one thing out of all of Castaneda's writings that gets widely remembered. Does that make it true or valuable? Obviously not, just another cliche, just another piece of pretty misdirection. I am well aware that a great many of the world's most popular spiritual doctrines advocate a heart-centered approach to spiritual development, but popularity among the soundly asleep may not be the best criterion by which to judge a method for waking up. Let me state it plainly. I know, right? Mm-hmm. Let me state it plainly, Arthur. I don't do heart. To the extent that I advocate any path, it is a path without heart, devoid of compassion, totally free of any thought for others whatsoever. The thinking is simple. Wake up first. Wake up, and then you can double back and perhaps be of some use to others if you still have the urge. Wake up first, with pure and unapologetic selfishness, where you're just another shipwreck victim floundering in the ocean, and all the compassion in the world is of absolutely no use to the other victims floundering around you. Resolve your own situation first, and then maybe your compassion will translate into something of value to others. I suppose that sounds cruel or unspiritual or whatever, but it only works the way it works. Make sense? Arthur nods thoughtfully. Hey, you've probably visited those foundries where they pour the molten steel that goes into those bridges of yours, right? Certainly, many times. Man, those places are scary looking. They make hell look like Aspen. You reckon there's a lot of different ways they could do that work, and they choose the one with heart? Arthur chuckles. Hardly. Of course not, because it works the way it works. This waking up thing isn't all sweetness and light. It's a serious business with a failure rate that's nearly absolute. Think about that. You're embarking on an undertaking that millions upon millions of sincere, intelligent men and women have committed their lives to without success. That's a pretty sobering statement. This is a process, and it works the way it works, or it doesn't work at all. You can't dictate terms. Preferences are irrelevant. It sounds like you're saying I might not even want to think of helping others once I myself am liberated. I don't know. Maybe not. Depends on how you're wired, I suppose. You see what I do, this teaching thing, right? He nods. Maybe you'll do something like this. Maybe you'll teach. Or maybe you'll go back to building bridges and just keep it to yourself. Hard to imagine, he says. It's impossible to imagine, but you're putting the cart before the horse. The simple fact is that you are of no use to anyone else if you're in the same direction, or if you're in the same situation that they are. Jesus, he mutters. It's the most colorful language I've ever heard him use. Here's a thought, I continue. When you're doing the writing, spiritual autolysis, do it for someone else. Write it for someone else. Express your knowledge for someone else's benefit. Write it for publication, as if the whole world will see it. Or write it as a series of letters to your son, or to an imaginary friend, or to the child you once were, whatever. Use the process of spiritual autolysis as a means of expressing your own highest knowledge for someone else's benefit. And, of course, keep improving it until you've stated the truth. Which I'll never do? What? State the truth? No, of course not. Is that him making sense? I feel like I'm hearing a soft whining from somewhere.
It might be.
I don't know, does Luna meow downstairs? Oh.
It's not that one. Yeah, there's a soft snore happening, but I don't know where it's. Sounds like a snore. Or a whine. I don't know what the hell it is.
If this house was actually haunted, you'd never fucking know.
It's true. It's gonna be really alarming someday when there's no animals in here and we're like,
You're just all be hanging out and you hear a crash in the other room. And we all just keep talking. Someone's like, hey, what was that? And you're like, dude, cats. It's like, no, but
there's no cats.
you don't have cats.
It's very true.
The house is rising out of quiet period now, and over the course of 15 minutes, it is transformed from a silent meditation hall into a bustling restaurant and social club. I'm amazed to see that there are over 30 people here, including a few I don't recall seeing before, and I wonder if some show up just for Sanea's cooking. The Krishna consciousness folks put a major emphasis on cuisine, and I wouldn't be surprised if many of their members initially stopped in just to see what smelled so good. Sanaya is a master chef who would be welcomed with open arms by any Indian restaurant in the world. When she is cooking, I regret that I have such a small appetite. I think I should talk about myself a little more, not to demonstrate how remarkable I am, but how ordinary. Obviously, I haven't always been an enlightened guy. I was a cute baby, a happy kid, a problem teen, and a wayward adult. No one looked at me back then and figured me for the future wisdom heart of a rural American ashram project. On the other hand, I have always possessed something of an insightful nature. I started struggling with cogito ergo sum in my early teens. Throughout my teens and into my 20s, I wrote short stories and essays that were trial assaults on the nature of reality, which helped me bring my thinking into focus. My thunderbolt epiphany came in my late 20s, around 50 pages into reading my first book of a distinctly spiritual nature. As all good epiphanies should, this one struck my brain like a bullet of light and redefined my entire life in a single instant. The realization was nothing more or less than this: truth exists. I was absolutely stunned. The lines of my being were redrawn in a flash. I was staggered by this simple statement, by the sheer absurdity of it. After all, how can someone not realize that truth exists? But the truth is, I didn't. My thoughts were so constantly turned towards denying what wasn't that I was effectively blinded to what was. The very act of fighting for liberation had imprisoned me. In order to oppose the false, I had to dwell in the half-light where falseness thrives. Finally, understanding that truth existed was the equivalent of crawling out of a putrid sewer and into the sunlight. Sunlight, the existence of which I should have suspected all along, but never quite did. But now I was in the sunlight, and it was totally mind-blowing. In that moment, I was finally born. Truth exists, my mind was shrieking. It doesn't matter what it is or where it is. Somewhere, somehow, there is truth. I don't care if it's in Christianity or Judaism or Islam or the most despised cult in the deepest bowels of depravity. It exists, and I will not spend another minute of my life flailing blindly around in the filth and miasma of ignorance for any other reason than to find it. The universe isn't vague and ignorant. I am vague and ignorant. Something is true, and it doesn't matter what it is. I'm not going to be false anymore. I have not even the slightest trace of the slightest reservation about the fact that I would rather suffer and die figuring out what is true than continue this life as a slave to lies and ignorance. It's quite the triad. exciting. I just reread those last few paragraphs, and they come somewhat close to what my brain looked like after the explosion. Death/rebirth events come in all shapes and sizes, and this was my first step. This was the one that separates who I was from what I am now. That was the day I set fire to my life and went to war. The next 2 years were spent in a state of burning obsession. I quit my job, dumped my belongings, and moved from Chicago to a small town in Iowa. I scoured bookstores and took full advantage of the local library's statewide lending program. I bought a computer and spent hours every day hunched over the keyboard trying to express the truth. I read and I wrote. I edited, discarded, and rewrote. Every few weeks, I would delete all my files, reformat all my disks, and burn, literally in a kettle barbecue, all my notes and handwritten pages. I almost never read anything I wrote because the mere act of writing it rendered it obsolete in my thinking. I severed all ties, no job, no friends, no family, and had only a few possessions. I did nothing else. I had no other thought. I went for long walks, thinking, pounding away at whatever door I was stuck behind at the moment.
So that answers the question of why does someone get a voracious appetite for knowledge?
Yeah.
I mean, he's basically saying all of a sudden he thought
there
is true.
Is true. I gotta go find it.
Yep. And so he dug and dug and dug, and every time he wrote it down, it dissolved.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I've always had I feel like I'd have to have quite a deep appreciation for this to have started a project like this even, you know?
Yeah.
But this is like reinforcing that pretty intensely to me because it's really cool to see. I mean, even in times where I'm like contending against something and then we get 2 pages later and I'm like, oh. I'm wrong.
Yep.
I went for long walks thinking, pounding away at whatever door I was stuck behind at the moment. And then one day, after a couple of years of this, I was suddenly done. Just like that. Done. Although I didn't think of it in these terms, I had become enlightened, satoried, awake, truth realized. Jnani, Buddha, whatever you want to call it. Getting the hang of this new state, however, would take me another decade. I've been asked if I'd do it all over again if I had the choice, but it's not something I chose in the first place. There was never any decision. I never made any choice. It's not like a career path where you set your sights and go after it. It's more like you're walking along a mountain path that suddenly turns to mud and you find yourself hurtling at breakneck speed into the unknown, and before too long, hurtling at breakneck speed into the unknown becomes your reality. And then, one day, equally without warning, you're launched into empty space. And before too long, empty space becomes your reality. That's where I am now. Empty space is my reality. The void. No self. I abide in non-dual, non-relative awareness. This is the part that can't be explained. I can't frame it in words, even for myself. No one can say, I am enlightened, because there is no I to it. There is no such thing as an enlightened person. The person writing these words, the person that speaks to the students, isn't the enlightened one. My personality, my ego, what appears to be me, is just an afterimage, a physical apparition based on residual energy patterns. Jed Mckenna is like the outfit an invisible man wears so that he can interact with people without freaking them out. So anyway, that's a little bit about me. Damn.
Yeah. Heartless. That's a cool, I mean, just the title of the chapter. I mean, he touches on it. Like, there is no heart path.
Yeah, it's not. The issue is that anytime you're mentioning heart, you're talking about emotions, and then anytime you're in emotions, the ego just manipulates emotions. So as soon as you're in those realms of like wishy-washy, not having it written down, it can just be swooshed and changed to whatever your ego wants it to be the most self-protecting.
Yep.
Which is like literally the opposite of the fucking mission. So.
Yep. Well, and I mean, you think about it, and I think Jed talks about it too. I don't know if it's in this book, but you know, it's like the heart and this concept of love and all of that. Like, that's almost the ego's last gasp effort to always stay connected to something that creates an identity. Like the minute you say there is no heart, it's a heartless path, you know, love is fear. Like the minute you start to go there, all of a sudden, I mean, if you say that to most people out there, they're like, you know.
Yeah. There's Francis's call and then text all around it. So I'm like, but they were all nothing.
Unrelated?
Well, seemingly. They weren't panic texts. So.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, this has helped me incredibly. Going over this again. It's interesting. I am intrigued by what you said about when you're about not tying it back. Like the reason maybe he doesn't say to investigate the things that upset you, and he just says pull at anything, because maybe the truth is you really could pull at anything, you know, and like I might be, it feels like something I should try to do.
Yeah.
Because then if there's not the emotional investment in it and you can have a little bit more witnessing within the process on just a basic shit, I don't know, you might make more progress.
Yeah. I mean, I would try it all, you know?
Yeah.
I think everybody might be a little bit different.
I think what we're describing is like, you know, I don't know, that's kind of maybe part of the creative process of the aspect is experimenting, maybe trying to understand how you're gonna, you know, what strategy you need to use to get past the egoic defender.
Exactly.
That's guarding your fucking brain.
Yep.
Because it doesn't want you to access your intellect. It wants you to tie it back to emotions, because intellect is going to be the killer.
Yep.
Fear is the mind killer. I'm reading Dune. I say that a lot. I never knew. I've heard that before. I didn't know it was from Dune.
Yeah. No, but I think it's good. I think everything is ripe for this practice, you know, and you're going to pull some duds, you know, you're going to pull on a thread and it's going to be like pink and you're just not going to get anywhere, and then do the next thing. And all of a sudden you're just going to like unravel this whole shit ton of stuff, you know, the next day it's going to be like a total dud again.
Yeah. Well, and that's why it's important to have, Napoleon Hill talks about this, you know, a definite purpose.
Yeah.
Where are you going? Where are you going? You have to have a guiding thing, because you have to keep doing it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or because otherwise, if you don't have a guiding thing, then you're probably not going to keep doing it. You're not going to have a reason to keep doing it, and you need to keep doing it because it does make progress, even if you don't feel you're making progress or a situation.
Yeah.
And also, you can definitely tell when you're making progress. I feel like when you go through one of those worksheets at the end, and it's like,
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. This is a process. It's not, I mean, maybe there's people out there that have done it once and are like, bing, but it's a process, you know? And even the quote at the beginning, the most useful piece of learning for the uses of life is to unlearn what is untrue. And it's like, we've learned so much truth in our life. Like everything, our reality, we feel like, you touch it, you feel it, it's true, it's here. Everything about us is focused on this is true.
yeah.
So to start to unravel that, it's a process. And you're going to hit ego, and ego's going to fight back.
Yeah. Really hard. It's going to like fight dirty.
Mm-hmm. even that place in us that we were like, yeah, he didn't give us a structure. He didn't give us like, well.
Yeah, like I was saying that out of my mouth.
Yeah.
This is wrong. So because this is the second phone call, I'm going to end the stream right now.
Okay.
Okay, this has been really wonderful. Asher Smith.
Jenny.
Bye, guys. Hello?